Hello, everybody, and welcome to Big Blue Kickoff live on this Monday, brought to you by Cadillac, or Tuesday, rather, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. John Schmelk, Matthew Sytak with you. Giants made some big decisions yesterday. We'll talk about that, and we still will continue to get your reaction to that on the phones at 201-939-4513. It was Madeline and Paul yesterday. I wanted to give them a chance to react to everything that happened. I figured put Matt and I on today, and then we'll head into our offseason schedule moving forward here to give us a chance to react to it. I'm happy I've kind of had 24 hours to think about this. Not that we haven't been thinking about this decision for the past month as it is. But, Matt, first of all, how are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay.
We made it through the season.
Yes, we did. Not without bumps and bruises, but we got through the season. Here's how I'm kind of looking at this and how I'm processing it. And I'm not sure if fans will like this or not, but this is kind of how I'm looking at it. First, I'll just say the same thing we've been saying for the past month. If you think their changes should have been made based on the record and the results, we get where you're coming from. John Mara said in his postseason press conference yesterday, he understands based on the results why the fans would want changes. But to me, when you look at this decision, and we've talked about this with what's happened in the past here, specifically when they let go of Tom Coughlin, kept Jerry Reese. I think the worst thing you could have done in this situation, I know we've had callers call up and ask about this the last month too, is kind of split the baby, right? Where you make one change, keep one, and go in that direction. That causes issues down the road. If you let go of the coach, keep the GM, well, the GM's on a short leash, who's going to want to come and take the job? You know, that sort of thing. It becomes very difficult with the way you navigate things moving forward.
Which, not to cut you off, but we've seen this exactly take place even as soon as recently as this morning with the Tennessee Titans.
Yep.
This is now
correct
3 straight off seasons that they've gotten rid of either the coach or GM. And that constant turnover just does no one good in that building.
Correct.
Franchise.
So if you want to try to keep them together, which again, I think they work really well together. I think there's really good synergy between the coaching staff at the front office. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And I just think, and I said this from the beginning of the year, that I would be blown away, shocked if the Giants made a general manager change, even after this year, even as bad as the season went. I just don't think they view that as a 3-year job here. Despite the fact that the win totals have gone down every year. John Mara said yesterday that the results better get better quick because he's running out of patience, much like the fan base. So I think he's and Steve Tisch are both very hesitant to take what Joe Schoen's put together on their front office, even though the results haven't been what you want them to be, where he's basically redone the entire scouting staff. A couple guys here or there have been held over, but for the most part, it's been redone. He's put together a team up there that I think John Mara likes. I talked about this throughout December when we had a caller ask, make your best case for keeping everybody. And I think we've been pretty careful not to try to, take a stand one way or the other on this stuff, right? So you don't want to go and reboot all the changes and the organization you've put together upstairs. And even though, again, some of the results from the first 2 draft classes, maybe not what you want, but I think once the guys have gotten in place, and I think we saw it this year, the process in terms of how they gather information, put things together, how that front office is run, and just the way the building is run, I think John Mara appreciates that and how they go about their business. And I believe he thinks if the process maintains its continuity the way it is now, better results will follow, like we saw with the 2024 draft class. Like we saw with some of the free agent additions this year and the John Runyons, the Jermaine Illuminors, guys like that, right? So that's why I think the decision was made the way it was, and I think it makes a certain amount of sense. Look, there are pluses and minuses to whatever decision they would have made. I know personally, I'm fans of Brian and Joe. We talk all the time. We get along. They're coworkers, so I'm very happy that they're here. I understand why some fans might not be. And you want to call up and talk about that, we can obviously have that conversation. But I think really that was the driving force here, Matt. You don't want to have to tear down and start over from scratch and restructure everything that Joe Schoen has put together over the last 2 or 3 off seasons and have to, again, begin this game from the beginning once again at 0.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. And I think a part of it, which Joe at least referenced at one point. I was trying to find the answer here. I couldn't find the exact answer, but he referenced this at one point that the playoff run in the first season, obviously, we will always take the Giants making the playoffs, and especially a playoff win, the first one in a decade, like that is fantastic. But on the flip side, there were some, repercussions from that playoff run and some decisions that were made, I think, because the decision makers, I guess, thought that the Giants team was closer to being that perennial contender that they, said from day one, that is our goal, to be a contender every single season, make the playoffs every year. I think that first season adjusted, their expectations of the timeline.
Yeah,
and
Joe answered that question back in his November press conference when he talked to the media.
Yeah, he spoke about it more then, and he referenced it at some point yesterday, not to the same amount of length, but I think that played a part, in my opinion, in this decision to give them, and them being Joe, Brian, the front office, the coaching staff, another year, because that decision or that playoff run led to some decisions that, didn't really go with a complete rebuild, a complete tear down. Let's start this thing over, build it from scratch. Obviously it led to the Daniel Jones contract, which Joe mentioned yesterday. While they did give Daniel Jones that contract, of course, that was their decision to do it, but they structured it in a way where they could get out after 2 years, and it's not going to be that much dead cap for them moving forward. I believe it's 22 million, something like that, which obviously it's more than zero, but it's not detrimental. It's not going to prevent them from making big moves this offseason. But just the point being, that playoff run, while it was great, like, it just led to some decisions that sped up, I think, the timeline for how long they thought they were going to be able to build a team that could contend.
Yeah,
and if, let's say, they had not made the playoffs that season, there probably would have been, to at least some extent, different decisions made. And I feel like we might be sitting in a different position right now. Obviously, there's no real point in going down that road, shoulda, coulda, woulda, that, doesn't really matter at this point. But I feel like that might have played a part in ownership's decision to really give them a chance. Obviously this season was not good enough. Mr. Mara made that abundantly clear. Joe made that clear. Dave's made it clear. Nobody thought it was good enough. That was a consensus feeling from everyone in this building.
And that there's a lot of work to do to fix it.
And there's a lot of work to do. But I agree with everything you said. I feel like Joe and Brian should be given an opportunity to turn this thing around. And as Mr. Mara said, he expects better results moving forward. There's another 3-14 season.
I believe his quote said, "At this time next year, I better be in a better mood."
Yes,
I believe was one of the quotes.
3-14 season again is obviously not going to cut it. So there are some level of expectations, at least to see just some stark improvement.
Yeah, and that doesn't, as Joe said, that's not, you must make the playoffs no matter what type of situation. But there has to be, I think you have to be involved in the playoff mix at some point. Like, we can't be sitting here on the weekend before October and be talking about draft position.
Yes,
like
100%.
That can't be happening.
No, but I think Mr. Mara wants to give Joe and Brian an opportunity to, and I know this has been said a lot in the last 2 months, but to pick their quarterback. Mr. Mara said,
now they did choose to retain Daniel Jones, though.
They did.
In fairness, that was their choice.
For sure, they did. And again, I just mentioned they structured it in a way where they could get out.
Yep.
This offseason, obviously it happened a little before the offseason, but without too much financial, negative consequences moving forward. Now they have an opportunity to either draft a quarterback, to sign a quarterback, to trade for a quarterback, whatever avenue they decide to go down, it's going to be up to them. And it's going to, obviously have a big impact on the future of the franchise, but an impact on them as well. Like, this is their time to decide who's going to be the quarterback of the future for the Giants.
Yeah.
And it's obviously the number one priority, the number one issue, the number one question that needs to be answered. Mr. Mara made that very clear yesterday.
Oh, and so did Joe and Dave. They all did.
Everyone did. So everyone is on the same page that the top priority this offseason is finding who that quarterback is going to be. And just based on what we've seen, the reports that we've heard, from last year's draft and all these different things, I have confidence that, at least in terms of the draft, that they will be able to identify which quarterback prospects they believe could help turn this franchise's fortunes around.
And that's not necessarily with the third pick.
It doesn't have to be.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
It could be the third pick. It could be trading up to try to get into the top 2.
Sure.
It could be selecting someone on day 2 that
or
they think
trading back into the first round to pick somebody.
Or trading back into the first round towards the end of the first round to take someone on day 2. There are so many different avenues that the Giants could go down to fill the quarterback position. As we've said, as I said at least last week, there are going to be multiple new quarterbacks in this building next year. It's not going to be just one, most likely not going to be just one new guy. Because the only guy that is currently on the team that is expected to be back, at least for almost certainty, is Tommy DeVito, which Joe mentioned yesterday. Tommy's an exclusive rights free agent. It's very easy for the Giants to bring him back at a very affordable rate. So Joe even made a comment yesterday saying that Tommy is the only quarterback that's under contract for 2025. So he clearly will be back. Other than that, it could be an entirely new quarterback room mixed with, with Tommy mixed with a rookie and 2 veterans, like 2 rookies. Like, we have no idea how they're going to go about filling this position, but
they'll attack it though in a lot of different ways.
They are going to attack it. That is the most resources, at least in terms of like research and time, is going to be spent on figuring out this quarterback position.
I agree. Just want to add a couple things to what you said, because I thought you made some really good points. I don't think they thought they were contenders off of the 9-7-1 year, but I think their hands were tied in terms of being able to tear it down, right? And I've said that before, where coming out of that year, you couldn't just let Daniel Jones walk. Like, you just couldn't. And even risking him hitting free agency without the tag or without the contract, would another team have matched what the Giants offered him? I don't think so. But, the Jets are looking for a quarterback that offseason too. What if Aaron Rodgers didn't work out for them? All right? We've known the Jets to throw money at problems before. So it made it difficult. Same thing with Saquon Barkley. And the other thing, and I remember I talked to Joe about this. It was on the air. It was at the Combine. I don't remember if it was the first year he got here, before he really did anything, when he was on Big Blue Kickoff Live with us, or what, it was a special feature show at the Combine, whatever it was, or it was the second year. And the question I kind of asked him, I said, you're kind of stuck in a little bit of an in-between state here, because when he got here, there were good players on the roster. Some a little bit older, the Leonard Williamses, the Adoree Jacksons, the guys like that. Some of them were younger players that were good. The Andrew Thomases, the Dexter Lawrences, the Julian Loves, the Saquon Barkleys, the Xavier McKinneys, guys like that. But usually, when you're taking over a team that, I had it in my written article, I don't have it off the top of my head, that won, I think, like 6-5, 4-4 in 3 games the previous 5 seasons, whatever it was, which the Giants had won, you're looking to tear things down. But at the same time, you had good players on the team that you don't want to just let walk away for nothing or trade, right? Because you think they're good players, they can help you long term. So throw on top of that fact that, unlike most bad teams, the Giants were in cap hell when he got here. So it's not like, all right, well, I'm going to re-sign Evan Ingram, right? I'm going to re-sign all, throw whatever young guy name out there you want. That was difficult because of the cap situation. And it would also then eat up all your cap space. So what I'll say to Giant fans that think, oh, they let the wrong guys go, they kept the wrong guys and all this stuff. And look, Joe Shane has said it. He's made mistakes the last 3 years, okay? Nothing's been perfect. You can easily have debates on this one way or the other. And I was thinking about this yesterday. If you retained everybody that you think was good from when they first got here, right? Everyone stays. Resign Julian Love, resign Xavier McKinney, resign Saquon Barkley, resign Leonard Williams gets extended last year instead of trading him. All those guys are back. Remember, Leonard Williams got paid over $20 million a year after they got traded to the Seahawks last year. Xavier McKinney got $20 million a year. Okay? Julian Love got a contract extension worth a lot of money. And again, they tried to bring Julian Love back. They offered him more than what the Seahawks did. Agent issues, it didn't work out. If all those guys were here, do you think the Giants are a Super Bowl contending team right now?
Probably not, no.
No, they're not. They're not. Especially with the quarterback situation the way it is.
Because that core, all those players you just mentioned, were, the core members of that 2022 playoff run.
And by the way, but they were also the core members of the 2021 team that won
exactly,
5 games.
Exactly what I was going to say. Like, that core went into the 2022 season, and expectations for that team outside of this building were so low.
And Matt, let's be honest. I don't think the expectations for that team inside the building were that high. There's a reason that they overhauled the entire front office staff and brought in all new people.
Yeah.
They knew they needed to reset things. That was the talk that offseason. It was about resetting things. That's the whole conversation. So you could have all those guys here. You wouldn't have $40 million in cap space this year. You probably still would not have a quarterback, right? Because if all those guys are here, you play better, you win more games, you're not in a position to draft a quarterback. And you wouldn't have the $40 million of cap space this year and the $100 million of cap space they're due to have next offseason. And you're still in the wilderness.
Not to mention, Brian Burns wouldn't be here.
Right.
Bobby
But look,
Okereke probably
if you wanted to,
here.
Matt, you could have just backloaded all those contracts the way the Saints and Eagles do. If you, I'm giving the benefit. I'm saying you backload that. You do full Saints. All right, you go full Saints, and everyone's here. You're still not contending for a Super Bowl, and you're shot to hell in terms of your cap space.
And you're kind of screwing over your future, as we see with the Saints
Correct.
going into this offseason.
Correct. So again, that doesn't mean that every one of those moves was correct. That's not the argument I'm making here, folks. My argument is that it was a very difficult situation to navigate, especially, again, I made the comparison. I go back to the first Knicks Leon Rose year when he got here. And it's the COVID year. They get the 4 seed. Julius Randle gets an all-NBA player, and they're like, look, we're really close here. So that next offseason, they bring in Evan Fournier. They bring in these vets because you think you had a good year. We want to build on that. And it was a disastrous year. Didn't work out. They were fortunate enough to be able to reset, restock, go a different direction, and become good again. Right? That's what the Giants are trying to do right now. So sometimes you have a good year. It might hurt you long-term a little bit. And I think that's what happened to the Giants in 2022. Not that you would trade that back. You always want to win as many games as you can. It was a great experience. But in the end, it didn't make this as clean as it could have been if you had a bad year in that first year that this regime was here. And I remember that conversation I had with Joe. I'm like, Joe, how tricky is it going to be to navigate putting your rebuild in place, building this roster in your image, but then managing these good players that you have and which ones you re-sign, which ones you don't, and how you handle the veterans. And it was going to be a tough situation to navigate. It turned out to be a pretty tough situation to navigate, which made it even more difficult by winning that first year. And I think that's kind of the summary of how we got to where we are right now. Again, not saying all those decisions were correct. Joe wouldn't say all those decisions are correct. But that's kind of how I've been thinking about it and rolling it over in my head over the last 24 hours. That's it.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Makes sense.
All right. 201-939-4513. 201-939-4513. We'll take your calls the rest of the way, get your reaction. Look ahead. You want to talk about how you build this offseason? That's great. Maybe we could talk about coaching staff stuff. Whatever you guys want to discuss, we can do it with you right here on Big Blue Kickoff Live on Giants.com and the Giants app. On the Giants Huddle podcast feed right now is Hangout out. So we have Giants Hangout. This was after all the press conferences yesterday, so we get a full reaction from Matt, Madeline, and Russ. Talking about everything that went down yesterday here at the Giants facility. And coming up tomorrow will be draft season on that feed and also on the draft season feed as well. Then later in the week, we should have a one-on-one player interview. I'll leave the name out, but it's going to be one I think fans will be excited about. And we'll try to get a Giants beat guy on to talk about the offseason as well before the week is up. But in the meanwhile, let's get to your phone calls and lead off. I haven't talked to Tim in Charleston, I feel like a while. Tim, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, Joe, it was just 2 weeks ago. Come on.
What's going
on? So I got 3 things. One, on the retaining Shane and Dave's. This is what I expected. This is what I think they had to do. And the thing that definitely made me decide that Dave's particularly – I knew Shane was going to stay, but Dave's would have to stay too, was all the comments from the players. It seemed like down the line, everyone supported him.
No, the players like him.
Everyone believed he had a plan.
The players
and
like him.
I think that had to play into Mara's decision as well.
Although he said as much. He said just seeing how he interacts with the players and how the players react to him was a big part of his decision.
Yeah. So the second thing I want to talk about is next year, because I want to, and I was going to actually call last week. I just couldn't get through to mention this before it was final. But people got to temper their expectations for next year. 10 of our 17 games next year are against teams that are in the playoffs this year. So that being said, you can break it down after if you want. You know who it is.
Yep.
That being said, I think that, we can't expect to even play 500 ball, honestly. But what we've got to expect, and what Mr. Mara probably wants to see, is against those 10 teams, particularly the 6 games in our own division, we've got to show that we can be really competitive against some of these good teams. Not be competitive against the also-rans and get blown out half the time against the good teams. We've got to show that we can hang in there when we play KC in our house. At least hang in there. We've got to show that we can win at least 2 games in our division. I mean, 3, I think, is a reach, given that, the top of the division right now looks pretty formidable. But we've got to show that. So, 7 wins might be the apex. And now it's possible that next year the player development suddenly comes around. None of these first-year players have a sophomore jinx. The second and third-year players start to develop a little bit better. And with key free agent signings and a good draft to augment that, maybe the Giants play above their heads next year. But that's a big maybe. That's a hope. That's not something you could hang your hat on.
Well,
So,
Tim, just out of curiosity, do you feel like people have really high expectations for next year? Is that the sense you've gotten from Giant fans? I've literally been keeping off Twitter for a reason because I don't want to see it to be just a hellscape. So I'm just curious what the sentiment is with that. I don't feel like there's 12 wins next year. Here we go. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be.
I only know based on my friends, and they were split pretty evenly over retain or fire these guys, right? Particularly Dable. But so I stay off Twitter, but I'm not on there at all. But anyway, no, I think what I'm saying is that if we are at next year and we've won 6 or 7 games, but we've been competitive against the good teams, I don't want to hear all the fans saying, "Oh, you see, Johnny," and you know who I'm talking about, who always goes to Johnny. "You see, Johnny, this guy should have been fired last year. The Jaguars fired their guy. They knew what they were doing. We didn't know what we were doing." It's like you can't expect a sudden, epiphany and turnaround. Since yesterday was the epiphany, I guess, and turnaround of this team. But they've got to see them be more competitive. Now, the third point the one thing at the beginning of the year, I said I was worried the most about us stopping the run. That turned out to be, prescient.
Yep.
But the thing that I'm concerned with is I like Shane Bowen, at least when I see his press conferences. I know he's had past success. He's had a plan. But the thing that bothers me is stuff like with Banks, where all season long, and you said it, and I've seen it, he sticks with people like glue, but he doesn't get his head around. He doesn't turn around and play the ball. Now, I'm like,
and by the way, Shane Bowen, Tim, real quick, Shane Bowen was asked that very question at the end of the year, and he reiterated that being the big problem with him. He basically, I can pull up the transcript, or Matt can, and he was asked that question, and he said directly, yeah, he's been pretty sticky. He just hasn't played the ball well once the ball gets to the catch point.
Yeah, well, if he doesn't see it, then there's a bigger problem. But the thing is, I'm saying this like, what is he doing about it? I'm worried that Shane Bowen maybe he's a little. I hate to use the word, but a little too soft with these players. If you have a guy as a coach, and he's doing most things well, but there's one thing he's particularly doing not well. It's like a receiver who keeps dropping the ball. You get him out in the jugs machine, you throw him 40, 50 balls a day.
Oh, dude, trust me, Tim. Jerome Henderson is working on that stuff with him every day. There's stuff I can't tell you about because it's not out there, but Jerome Henderson's done a lot of creative things to try to get Tay Banks to play the ball better. I'll leave it at that. I can't give more detail on it than that, but trust me, it's something they work on daily, and they know it's a big deal. And there was a point in the middle of the season where Banks was taken off the field in games because they weren't getting the results that they were looking for, and they tried to put him back out there after that, and it still didn't click. So to me, now what you're looking at, this is a player issue. Deontay Banks has to be able to say to himself, if I want to make it and I want to be a really good quarter in the NFL, I need to get better at this. No matter what I do, this is something I have to improve upon. And if he has to put all of his energy into that one thing. And if he can do that, he's going to be a good player. To me, this is on the player now. You can only try to, coach this thing up so many different ways and tell the guy to do it so many times. At this point, the coaches know what the problem is. They've expressed it to the player. They've taught him the technique that he has to use in order to perform the task they're asking him to perform. It's time for him to perform that task properly based on how he's being coached.
Okay. I mean, like I'm saying, send him down the field with a live receiver 10 times a day or however many times a day.
They do. They do in practice.
And if you don't turn around on one ball, you're going to do it 5 more times until you turn around every damn time.
Well, remember, Tim, there are rules, though.
He could have
you only have so much
receptions this year.
Yeah, but Tim, remember,
he's waving at balls that he could have caught.
There are rules, though, Tim. You only have so much practice time, so you are limited in the amount of time you have to work on the field too. There are rules to these things.
That's something they need to fix in the next collective bargaining agreement too. So,
what's something that'll never happen for 500, Alex? Appreciate the call, Tim. Good stuff. Right, I wish they would. I'm with you, Tim, but you're never going to add practice time when you redo these CBAs. That's something, generally speaking, while the players might like that, the owners aren't going to make financial concessions for more practice time.
No.
Generally speaking, we're probably not going to see that.
No, definitely not. And just adding on to, I guess it was Tim's second point here about the Giants' schedule in 2025.
Do you want to give it?
Yeah, so there's
it ain't pretty, folks.
The 6 games against Dallas, Philly, and Washington. Then the remaining home schedule. These are the 5 remaining home games. It is the Packers, the
playoff team,
Vikings,
playoff team,
Chiefs,
playoff team,
Chargers,
playoff team,
49ers.
Only made the Super Bowl twice in the last 5 years.
And then the 6 other away games, because there's the additional, the 17th game is away next year, we'll start with the playoff teams with Broncos and Lions, and then Bears, Raiders, Saints, Patriots. So while those last 4 are obviously, picking around the Giants slot in this draft coming up in a few months, altogether.
And 2 of them do have quarterbacks, though.
Yes.
So
yes,
that's the Bears and the Patriots. They both have young quarterbacks, and when you have a young quarterback, you can take a jump, and both teams can have new coaches, too. Could very easily see both those teams taking a jump next year.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, all good. You put all that together, though, and I hate to break it to Giants fans, but based on regular season records from the 2024 season, the Giants have the number 1 hardest strength of schedule next year.
Is that true? I didn't see that number.
The
doesn't surprise
number 1
me.
hardest. Which, you ask 4th place finish, how does that happen? But
wait, how is it? No, seriously though, how is that? It can't be harder.
The only 4th place finishes that matter for the schedule are the 49ers, which obviously, while they did come in last, you expect them to probably be closer to a playoff team next year than what they were this year.
It can't be harder.
And then Saints and Patriots.
Yeah, but how is it physically possible for it to be harder winning percentage-wise than Washington and Philly? When they're playing different teams from the same division that have better records than the teams the Giants are facing.
Because some of the opponents are obviously different.
No, but they're from the same division, but they're playing teams that were better, right?
I know. This is what came out yesterday since the end of the season.
No, but just think about it, right, Matt? So and again, I'm not saying you came up with the stat. I'm saying whoever came up with the stat I don't think is correct. Just think about it this way. Right? When you figure out these teams, they both are playing the NFC North. No. Which division are they playing? They're playing the NFC North. Yeah, correct. You got the NFC North next year, and you have the AFC West. So those opponents are all going to be the same, right? Oh, I know why. I just thought of it. The Giants have the Eagles on their schedule. But the Eagles have the Giants on their schedule.
Yep.
That's why. So the Eagles are actually playing tougher teams from the NFC South, the AFC East, and and there's one other division in it, and the NFC West. But the difference in record between the Giants and the Eagles must cancel that out.
I was gonna say Giants are number.
That's why.
Giants are number 1.
That's funny.
Eagles are 4. And then Dallas is tied for 5th, and Washington is 8th in terms of hardest schedules. And obviously those other 3 teams are a little bit lower because, as you said, they have the 3-14 Giants on the schedule, while the Giants are facing the
14-3 Eagles.
14-3 Eagles.
Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, because you know what I mean? In those other divisions, the Eagles and Commanders and Cowboys are playing better teams than them. So I'm like, where does the record come in? I'm like, oh, it's because the Giants play the Eagles, but the Eagles play the Giants, and that moves the schedule. So you just got to think about it a little bit, and then you figure these things out, or I'm just a moron, one or the other. Let's go to Drew in Virginia. He's up next. Hey, Drew.
Hey, John. How you been doing, man? Long time no speak to.
Yeah, Drew. Hope you're doing well, man. Good to hear your voice.
Hey, who's the other gentleman with you? I'm sorry, I kind of came in late, and
Matt?
He's a new person.
Yes,
so
this is
I'm not familiar with him.
Matt Sytak. He's one of our writers and behind-the-scenes website guys, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
What's your title?
Digital media.
Yeah, digital media guy.
All right, Matt. Well, hey, I just want to say hi to you too. It's just it's been a while since I called in, man.
Hey,
it's
Drew.
been quite a while. Hey, John, man. First things first. I was listening to the show yesterday about Paul Dottino.
Yes.
And he was kind of opining about all of the issues that the Giants have had, and that's why their records are the way they are, and this and that. My thing is this. I'll look at it from I'm sorry, man.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Perspective. No, I'm sorry. Which is you are what your record says you are, right? That's what Parcells used to always say.
Now,
right?
I will say this. Paul has actually been consistent about this. The one thing that Bill Parcells has said that Paul doesn't necessarily agree with is that particular quote. Otherwise, Paul's all in on everything Bill Parcells has ever said. And I think to an extent, some teams can be better or worse than their records. But look, that's not – I think last year, for example, I think the Giants their record was better than what the team was, for example. And this year, I think it's probably the other way a little bit. But anyway, Drew, what's your point?
Well, the point of it is that quote that I just stated actually comes to mind for the Giants organization, because in the last 10 years, we have an average winning percentage of 5.7 games.
Yeah, I mean, look, Drew, I haven't seen it updated. I know as of last year, the 2 teams with the worst record since some random date have been the Giants and the Jets. So, yeah, look, no doubt about it. The Giants have had as limited amount of success as you can imagine since 2017. It has not been good.
Right. And so, so that's, and you also mentioned earlier today about, are the Giants looking for a do we think we would have won the Super Bowl last year? I know your question was rhetorical, but I understand that. But my answer to that is Super Bowl. Hell, I just want to win in season.
Oh, and by the way, Drew, I didn't say win. I said contend. Just be a contender in that scenario I put out there.
Even on that, for me, I got you, John. But even on that, for me, just give me a winning team, okay? Enough with the under 500, percentage.
Drew, I agree, but you cannot sacrifice too much of your future just to become an average team, and that's the trick here, right? And Joe Shane was asked this yesterday. Right. I don't know, and trust me, I know you're not saying this. I just want to make the larger point for the fans out there. Joe Shane was asked this question yesterday. Are you now understanding that John Mara, through his own words, says his patience is running low? Would you go and backload contracts and trade future picks to try to win now? And he said, I'm not going to do that because that is dangerous. That's the situation you run to. That could be a problem. You can't do something like that is my point.
Right. Let me address that, okay?
Yes.
I don't disagree with that at all, okay? Look, I'm a Giants fan, but I'm a sports fan first. I don't look at anything through any team colors.
No, that's smart.
Right? Right. So that's just me. That's who I am. I'm a huge Giants and Yankees fan, but I don't look at those through that lens. And so my point is, I kind of look at what everybody else is doing and everything else, and just over the last 10 years, for whatever it is, every year, we come to where we are today. Oh, it was injuries, it was this, it was that, it was contract, it was bad to say, but again, 10 years of mediocrity is that. I think that's what the fans are more frustrated about than anything else.
Absolutely.
So again,
100%,
I know
Drew.
you. I
No
know
argument.
You're not saying, but again,
No
let
argument.
me just finish this. Again, I'm not the Super Bowl. That's not even in my in the back of my head.
Of course.
A winning season
I agree
is
with you.
what I'm more interested in.
No, that's fair. 100% fair.
And then let me say something else. Let me just address two other issues, man. I've been actually dying to address these a while ago, man. With regards to Dan, look, I've always been a Daniels Jones. I've had all types of Giants fans looking at me like I was crazy. I've had people laughing at me like I was stupid because I have always believed in Daniel Jones. Okay, that's just me. I always thought he had, I always felt like he given the chance, he would have had to, he would have been a lot better than people thought he was. All of that said, I think at the end of the day, when I look at it, the one decision that I think failed Daniel Jones, and I think is why the Giants ultimately decided to move on, is when you got a bad offensive line, John, right? We all know that, I've always been crying about the Giants' horrendous offensive line. When you got a bad offensive line and the quarterback gets the ball and he's about ready to get crushed or killed, they don't have time, they don't have time to look down the field or pass off, right?
Yep.
And so my point is, and this is where this criticism comes in against Daniel Jones, I think, and this is also new to me in my thinking too, I think the Giants are better off trying to find a quarterback whose first instinct is to be able to get rid of the ball quick. Holding on to, I'll give you a perfect example. Did you see the Lions
Vikings game, yeah. And
right?
Sam Darnold likes to hold the football. I'm guessing that's where you're going with this, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
I mean, he had no, but because here's the thing, John, and I'm sure, again, you being the analyst, I'm sure you saw this, okay? Donald had all types of players open. He was just I thought he did. He would, especially Jeff. There was a couple of plays where if he would have got rid of the ball when he should have got rid of it, Jefferson would have made the play.
I think there were a couple spots in the red zone. I thought the Lions' coverage in the game was actually pretty darn good, especially considering who they had on the field.
Yeah, look, the Giants.
We can agree to disagree, Drew. Not important. It's fine.
No, the coverage was good, but my point is, and I think you would agree with this, Donald was worse. I think if they had a quarterback with quicker decision making, is what I'm saying. I don't think that coverage would have been that tight.
So then I would say, Drew, then if I'm in your boat, then I would look more at a veteran than a rookie. Because a rookie's not going to be, generally speaking, there are some exceptions to the rule, but you're not going to get a rookie that's making super quick decisions.
Well, that's true, and that therein lies the rub, right? Because I don't know if honestly, I don't know who we're going to get for a quarterback. I don't even know. And my let me ask you this question real quick: who's out there that the Giants might be interested? I don't even know if there's anybody out there, right?
No, Drew, and look, we don't know who teams are going to let go at this point. There are guys that are on rosters that become available.
In the draft, John.
Oh, in the draft. I mean, the two guys at the top are Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, two guys, by the way, who do like to hold the football a long time. They don't get rid of it quick.
Right.
So just be warned
you,
about that.
Right. And so because I'm not exactly thrilled to death with Shedeur Sanders. I mean, I like him. I like the kid. I think he has a lot of heart. But I don't know if I want him as a quarterback. And so, but that goes to my point, right? Do the Giants draft a quarterback? And I'm sorry, and real quick, where are we picking now?
Third.
Okay, so that's what I was looking at. But as far as the quarterback, John, no, I don't know the answer, sir. I don't know where we're going to go and this and that. But my point is I think we're so messed up on the offensive line. I think it would do the Giants good to get a quarterback that has the ability to make those quick decisions.
No, Drew, fair point, and appreciate the call. Always good to hear from you. Or how about you just get an offensive line that doesn't make the quarterback get rid of the ball right away? Not asking too much.
Yeah, well,
the offensive line this year.
The offensive line this year was not perfect by any means. But, and I said this last week, the first 6 games, when they had the same 5 offensive starters playing every single snap on the line together, outside of that Vikings Week 1 game, which was just overall just a bad performance, the offensive line played pretty well those next 5 games. The offensive line was not the reason the Giants were losing those games at the beginning part of the season. Now, once Andrew Thomas went down, it's a whole nother story. And Joe even mentioned yesterday how important Andrew Thomas is to that unit. Like, it was sort of like you knocked that one domino down and the rest sort of fell after.
Though I do think once they got Illuminor out there at left tackle, I think
better.
that did restabilize things again.
Yeah, but obviously I'm not going out on a limb here saying even with Illuminor moving to the left side, the overall unit is still taking a pretty big hit without Andrew Thomas out there. Obviously.
Yeah, but I think that would be the case for any offensive line that loses their
for sure.
starting their best player and their left tackle.
They're all pro left
yes,
tackle.
Correct.
Yes, but point just being the beginning part of the season when Andrew Thomas was healthy, those first 6 weeks we saw an offensive line that was drastically improved from 2023, which again, 2023 with Thomas missing 9 games, that line was one of the worst we've seen, in
the history of the league.
Yeah,
it
was horrendous. So being a step up from that, I know maybe not the biggest of steps there, but nonetheless, we spoke about this. It was like a middle of the pack offensive line for the first 6 weeks of the season, which quite frankly, you can win with a middle of the pack offensive line if you have the right guy playing behind them.
Now you can still aim for better though.
Of course. You would love to have the line like the Detroit Lions,
right?
Where
or
it doesn't
Eagles.
matter who you put back there, they're gonna have success because they're gonna be given a lot of time to operate in the pocket. Of course.
Underrated. Bo Nix has had one of the best offensive lines in football this year too. A big reason he's had a lot of success.
Believe it or not, he's had a great year because of it. So
it's funny how that works, right? Cliff in New York. He's up next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hi, Cliff.
Hey guys, listen. I was very uplifted by yesterday. I felt like we were a successful team. I really did.
Why?
Huh? Why?
It was press conferences. I mean,
why? Because the owner has confidence in the process.
Okay, I got you.
And these guys impressed me from the beginning. I haven't given up on any of their draft choices, and I haven't given up on any of their free agents. The key that I said to Pearson was something Matt said a few weeks ago. The key to understanding this regime was what they had when they came in, what they started with, what was the situation. And the cupboard wasn't exactly bare when it came to players, but it sure was with salary cap. And this is lost on people. They just don't know. To me, these first 3 years, we're really about building a foundation for going forward. We're still in a foundational phase, I have just had no reason to question Joe's administration, and I think it's been helpful to point out that he didn't have the front office staff that he needed the first year, but he didn't do too bad anyway with that first year, having no money to spend on free agents, and he brings in these 2 offensive linemen that stabilize things well enough to be functional, and the rest is history. But going to the archive when I miss this show, gives me the opportunity to see some huddles, and I saw the Baldy huddle. And, speaking of not giving up on people, he mentioned he's looking forward to seeing Evan Neal have a complete off-season to work on things, which is something we don't think about when a player gets hurt. We don't think that they also miss, what they have to miss in the preseason and leading up to the preseason because they're hurt. That applied to Wandale also. He missed the first couple of games in 22, but wasn't that because as a rookie he had also missed the whole a great deal of the preseason as well. So I'm feeling pretty good going forward, but I would really like to feel, which we didn't get. I can understand why we didn't get reassurance on this. I'd like to see the full 5 years. Thank you very much. The brutality of the schedule. This is at least the third time that I can remember in recent years when we had a lousy year record-wise and we have a brutal schedule the following year and teams better than us have an easier schedule. This is at least the third time I remember that happening, and that's the way it is. That's the way it is. But I know that the attitude in the building among the players and the coaches, they would rather, for player development purposes, I'm sure they would rather play the best teams any day.
No, for sure, Cliff. And Cliff, appreciate the call. You talked to the players in the locker room. We were in there for, 2.5 hours, I think, on Monday morning, something like that, Matt?
Something like that.
And the players seem to think that the team talent-wise is not that far away. That seems to be what the players think. And, we've been in that locker room after bad years before. That's not always the sentiment, to be totally honest with you. That seemed to be the sentiment in there when we talked to the players yesterday.
100%. And that kind of was like across the board. It wasn't like, just one or two guys saying it. It was almost everyone that spoke, including some of the team's, biggest leaders.
Andrew Thomas said that, for example.
Brian Burns.
Yep.
Like, go down the list. These were, and they weren't, I don't think they were saying it, just to say it or to give, fans false optimism. It seemed like they genuinely believed it.
No, I agree with you.
Obviously, we'll see how things play out next year. If certain guys take steps in their development, who else is brought in. But, I mean, the record was what it was this season, but you can't look at the roster and say that it's like completely barren of talent because there are some talented players there. There are plenty of others that the Giants are going to need to take big steps next year in order for the team as a whole to take a big step.
Yeah, look, and I wrote this in cover 3. I doubt it's up yet, but I think this offseason, you got your $40+ million of cap space. Spread it out. Get a bunch of solid starters. Don't try to, do the Brian Burns move where you spend it all in one spot, right? And I think you just try to fill out the roster, get some better depth, get better starters in spots where you have holes, and that's how I think you attack this offseason. Jonathan's in Westchester. He's up next. Hey, Jonathan.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good, man.
Good.
I actually wanted to talk about near-term moves that I'd like to see.
Sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this. So, under the CBA, my understanding is that you can extend a contract after the player has played 3 seasons. Is
That's
that right?
correct, yes.
From the 2022 class, I'd like to see the Giants extend both McFadden and Wandell. I think the arrow's pointing up for both of them. McFadden's coming off of back-to-back 100-plus tackle seasons. I think he had his best year this past year. He had 107 tackles despite only playing in 14 games. Wandell, he's proven to be very tough. He had also, I think, his best season this past year, 93 receptions for almost 700 yards. People make the argument with respect to, all the Giants receivers that they had 4 different quarterbacks throwing to them this year. So, I think Wandell deserves to have that taken into account also.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think both guys have been solid. I think it all depends on the price point, right? And whether or not you can do something that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's right. And then 2 other guys. I know, Matt, I know you're a fan of this guy, Deontay Johnson. He obviously missed the bulk of the season, but when he came back at the end, I thought he looked good, especially last week.
He's only been here 2 years, though, so you have some time on Deontay Johnson.
Yes.
My understanding is he's an exclusive rights free agent.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, you can bring him back without having much of a negotiation there. So.
Okay. And then the other guy, Smith Marset, I think, is going to be unrestricted, right? He was special teams player of the week against the Colts. He's a big reason, actually, I think, why the Giants are picking 3rd and not 1st. He had that 100-yard kickoff return.
Sure, absolutely.
So, he's a guy I'd look to bring back. I don't think he fumbles a lot. Start there. Start with bringing back your guys. And wanted to get your thoughts on that. All right, thanks for all the great work, guys.
No, I appreciate it, man. Look, and I think
Thanks,
Amir
Jonathan.
Smith-Marset wants to be back. He's a local kid. He loves playing here. I talked to him on Monday a little bit. I talked to him last week before the final game, and I think he wants to be here, and he's pretty psyched to be here next year. So,
yeah, I mentioned this last week. We saw that Sights and Sounds video that got posted to Giants.com after the Colts game. His reaction on the sideline after returning that kick for a touchdown, you could tell that man was so genuinely excited and just happy. I would love to see him back. I think he's kind of stabilized that kick returner position that, has kind of been a bit in flux for the last few years. I mean, it felt like we thought it was kind of settled with Gunnar Olszewski, and then he gets hurt, which is what led to Amir Smith-Barset being brought in, and then we never saw Gunnar again. I don't know health-wise what his situation was, but with the way that Amir was playing, there was no need to rush or, bring Gunnar back. So I would love to see Amir back for sure. I think he would bring just, again, some stability to that kick returner position. He showed some bounce and some just explosiveness from that position. Some of the other guys Jonathan talked about, again, I do like Deontay Johnson. Obviously, he only played one game. Hopefully he will be brought back and at least given an opportunity to compete during training camp. If he hadn't injured his ankle during training camp this past year, it certainly looked like he was heading towards making the opening day roster, and then who knows what could have been from there. But I hope he's given a chance. And the first two guys he mentioned, Micah McFadden and Wan'Dale Robinson, seems like the Giants have big plans for them to be a part of this team at least in 2025. Micah McFadden, I think, has earned the right to take that spot next to Bobby Okereke in the middle of the defense. The two of them together, I think, form a very solid middle linebacker duo. Just two tackling machines. Micah did have his best season. Jonathan was right about that. And with Wan'Dale, I mean, he's just time and time again proves to be just very shifty and elusive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think with Malik on one side, we don't know who exactly is going to be the other outside wide receiver next year. Could be Jalen Hyatt, could be someone brought in, drafted, free agent, we don't know. But you put in a big body receiver at that other outside position with Malik Neighbors on one side and then Wan'Dale on the inside, that is going to be a very tough trio of wide receivers to cover for any defense.
Yep. No, I agree with you. And I think you can also edit that spot if you want to. Try to get another big-time receiver with Neighbors to help whoever the quarterback is too. So
I told you, I know it might be a little too rich at number 3, or even if you were to trade down to take a wide receiver, in the top 10 2 years in a row. But man, would Tet McMillan be just a perfect guy to round out that wide receiver trio with Malik and Wan'Dale.
I got a question for you. And Jim in New Jersey, I'll get to you in a second. And you haven't done all your studying yet. I haven't finalized my grades either. But if I was to tell you that you draft Travis Hunter, but he can only play receiver for you and that's it, or you could draft Tet McMillan, which guy would you pick?
Honestly, probably Tet McMillan. Travis Hunter overall, I think, is a better overall football player. But if you're going to not put him out corner at all, we're talking pure wide receiver, Travis Hunter's amazing, but Tet McMillan, I just think, is a such better fit for what the Giants need at that second wide receiver spot.
I think I would lean that way too myself, to be honest with you. I was just curious to see what.
But I do think whatever team drafts Travis Hunter will at least attempt to have him have some sort of playing both ways. Some package, whether he's a full-time corner and package of wide receiver plays or vice versa. I think they will at least try early in his career to have some sort of package on the opposite side of the ball.
Jim in New Jersey's up next. Hey, Jim.
Well, John, both of you, happy holidays, happy New Year, I guess.
You too, my friend.
I just want to say, start off, I really do agree with you and Matt about the McMillan-Hunter thing. If you asked me if we needed a receiver, I'd want a receiver, so that would be a thing. But the big point for me, and I know we're at the end of the show, so I want to monologue here, but the big point for me is really simply this. First off, John, I'm going to be looking forward to all your draft stuff. I don't like having to always look forward to your draft stuff, but it's terrific stuff, and it really is. It's great work.
Well, Jim, what I'll say, if you got some free time before we start diving into it on the huddle, just go check out draft season. Tony Paulie and I have been digging into it for the last couple of months.
You and Pauline do an amazing job. I
always
enjoy that as well. And I'm a subscriber, and I've left a 5-star.
Jim, you're the best. Thank you.
There you go.
Well, look, here's the thing. Look, this is an FAN. You guys are there. At least I feel. We're not here to, I don't think, to rip the team or whatever. I had different feelings about how everything worked out with, how they're going forward. But
And Jim, that's
simply
fine.
say-
And by the way, if fans have different
Yeah, but
opinions,
obviously,
and
John-
that's okay, I got no
Yeah,
problem with that. I get it.
But what I'm trying to say is, no, we have to have. Look, I'm not saying people shouldn't be upset, but I'm just saying there's other places to do that. Look, ultimately, what do we want to do here? Look, we're fans. We want to succeed. So I guess for me, when like you were talking about like McMillan and Hunter or whatever, to me, really what I hope, and I've been a fan for 55 years, what I want for the Giants is to, and Joe Shane and Brian Dable to be successful, is to pick the best players in the draft.
Agreed.
And the best fits for free agency.
Yep.
And
Agreed.
When I listened to Mr. Mara today, in the press conference, I think people kind of were a little bit hard on him because he's a plain-spoken guy. I think he does want to work out the quarterback. I think he knows that you have to have a starting quarterback who's competent and can work there. But what I do hope is that some people are taking that to an extreme and sort of saying, well, see, he demands they must have a quarterback this year. It must be. And I just, hey, I'll listen to all the film work you guys do and go beyond what I look at the stuff. But my real concern is if they really believe in this idea of building it the right way, let's build a team. My take is pick the best players. And if that means you got to roll out a kind of a veteran next year as the quarterback, not earn the third pick on maybe a guy who's being overdrafted, or a project deeper down that can end up being like a Matt Corral or something, or you're going to go for kind of like a Jalen Hurts, but you don't have the team to support it. To me, pick the best players. If the best player is that defensive lineman from Michigan who can, line up next to Dexter and will be like a monster, and like I think it was
Mason Graham.
I'm blanking. Thanks very much, Matt. Anchor down. But the thing is just for me, pick the best players. Make the team better so that whoever that's going to be, get the best players. And if getting the best players means things like maybe trading out of 3 for a team that's desperate to draft Shedeur Sanders like the Raiders or something, you can get another second or something to get up or other stuff, get it and get as good a roster as you can. If this is the year for the quarterback, great, but it doesn't feel like it.
Jim?
It feels like we had years where there were great tight ends or there were great quarterbacks. There's a lot of them. It doesn't feel like that year. Don't force it. That's what I'm hoping here. Just don't force it. And that's really, when I call in, that's really what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that Joe and Brian and Mr. Mara, that's the focus. But don't because, everybody on Twitter says you must have the quarterback. Just build a team. Get the best players. There'll be somebody. There's going to be somebody who's competent, but that's an easy thing for me to say. It's not my job on the line. But
Thank you, Jim.
That's what I hope the Giants do.
Appreciate the call, man. Look,
Thanks, Jim.
Largely, I agree with you. You fill needs in free agency. I think you have to leave with a free agency with a quarterback you're comfortable starting week 1, or trade, whatever, a veteran, however you get him. And then in the draft, I'm not so interested in filling needs in the draft this year. I just want to pick the best guy. I do think you want to walk away with a quarterback somewhere, find where the value meets the quality of the player and pick him there. And I agree. Now, I'd love to walk away with Cam Ward if I could, but am I trading next year's first-round pick to do that? Nope. I'm not doing that. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm with you in terms of at least those top 2 quarterbacks. I definitely, January 7th, lean more towards Cam Ward. I think he just has a higher ceiling than Shedeur Sanders. But I agree. You can't force a pick. And, what gives me confidence that the Giants are not going to just force a quarterback pick this year is they didn't do it this past year. In the 2024 NFL Draft, sitting at number 6, the Giants had J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix, Bo Nix there to take if they wanted. Clearly, they were not as high up on the Giants draft board as Malik Neighbors, so the Giants did not force the pick, and they went with who they believed was the best player available. And look how it turned out. Malik Neighbors had a record-setting rookie year. So, obviously, circumstances have changed a little bit from 2024 to now going to the 2025 draft, but the fact that they didn't do it this past year gives me confidence that they have a plan, they have a process, and they're going to stick to it. And I think it will lead to them picking the top player on their board come draft night. We'll see. A lot can change between now and April 24th. But today on January 7th, that is how I'm leaning, how I feel.
And I was very encouraged for that very reason, real quick, by Joe Shane's answer to that very similar question that he got asked yesterday. That look, we're gonna build this thing the right way. We're not gonna try to, do something just for this year. So
no Hail Marys.
Yes, that was the quote. No Hail Mary. So hopefully that's what happens, because you're right. The last thing you want is, you draft a quarterback this year, you're forced, it doesn't work out. Then if there's changes next year, you have a quarterback with a new regime. Like, all that's bad. You don't want any of that. So if you believe in a guy, you pick him. If you think he's the best player, you pick him.
Yep.
If you don't, you don't. And that's how you should handle these things. Matt, this was fun. So we'll be with you the rest of the week here, 12:30, Big Blue Kickoff Live. For Matthew Sitek, I'm John Schmelk. It was all brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. We'll see you next time, everybody.